This video is about how to use the table feature of your calculator, and it's very, very, very useful. So first, let's start by entering a function. I'm going to just enter x squared. We know a lot about that function. Again, make sure none of your plots are highlighted. And let's look at the table of values for this function. Table is above the graph key, so we're going to hit second graph to see it. And notice we can see some x values, and our corresponding y values for our function entered in y1. Now, if your table does not look exactly like this, I will go through and show you how to change your table setup. But just for now, let's take a look at what this table is telling us. Notice I am able, with my settings right now, to arrow up and down to find different y values for a given x value. If I wanted to know what does y equal when x is 4, I can read it right here. It's 16. I can maybe scroll up to see more of them. But notice the way my table is set up right now, if I wanted to know what is y when x is 1.5, I can't see that because I'm only going up by ones. So let's look at our table setup. So that's right above the window key. So we're going to go to second window, which is table setup. And you can pick where you want your table to start. So if I wanted to know what is y when x is 17, maybe I don't want to have to click down until I get to 17. I can tell it to start when x is 17. And if I also wanted to know what is y when x was 17.5, I can make the change in the table. Instead of going up by ones, we can go up by 0.5. You can go up by 0.25, you can go up by whatever increment you want. But that's this little delta here, this triangle, that's delta, that means change in your table, and that's the increments of what you're going up by. Right now I'm going to leave independent and dependent both set on auto, and let's look at what we just changed. Let's see how that affected our table of values. Now when we went to table, it starts us right off at 17, and it is going up by 0.5s, and it's giving us those corresponding y values. Remember, our function was x squared. 20 squared is 400, so this does match up with, what we should know. I still have the ability to arrow up and down if I wanted to, but it did start us at 17, just like we asked. Now let's go back to table setup. Independent, let me change that. Instead of to auto, let me change that to ask. So I just arrowed over until it was highlighted, and then I hit enter, and now it's blinking. Now when I go to table, nothing's there. Because what that setting does is the calculator's waiting for you to ask it for a specific x value. It's not just automatically giving me a list of them. So if I wanted to know what is y when x is 8, I can type 8 when I have set the independent variable to ask, hit enter, and it gives me, oh, y is 64 when x is 8. What about when x is negative 24? Oh, y is 576. This feature is very useful if you have to plug in a lot of different values, not necessarily like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but a lot of maybe randomly spaced values, like 8, negative 24, 259. It's nice to have that ask feature, so you can just really plug into your function and get your y value right away. It's really handy for that. If we go back to table setup, if you set your dependent value, that's your dependent variable, that's your y value. If you set that on ask, all that does is it leaves y blank until you arrow over and hit enter. I don't know how useful that is. Maybe, I don't know, if you wanted to wait to calculate y for some reason. So what this is essentially doing is plugging in for x. And I always have students ask me, well, how do I plug in for y and have it solve for x? With the table feature, you can't do that, unfortunately. You might have to use your brain for that one. But usually, for the dependent, I almost always leave that on auto. For dependent, I would always leave that on auto. But independent, sometimes it is really handy to have the calculator wait for you to ask it for a specific value. What happens if we have more than one function in our calculator. If I go over to table now, actually let me change the table setup back to kind of the default how it was before. I'll make it start at 0, go up by 1s, and I'm actually going to leave this on auto as well. Now if I go over to table, notice it's giving us two output columns, y1 and y2. So we have to remember y1 was our x squared function, y2 is now representing our x plus 5 function that I put in. But it's kind of nice because I can see the y values for both of those functions simultaneously. This might be handy for maybe estimating where these functions intersect. Where are their y values the same? Well, let's see. I would guess somewhere in here, because we had here y1 was bigger, and let's see, as soon as we get here, y2 is bigger, so they must have intersected somewhere in this vicinity. And maybe they intersect again, actually. If you look a little bit further, looks like here y1 is smaller, and here y2 is smaller, so maybe they intersected again somewhere in this vicinity. So it's just kind of nice to use the table to maybe compare y values of two different functions at the same time. So you can play around with that. You can play around with your table setup, play around with plugging in functions, and good luck!